Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Mocktail Minutes. This week I am drinking, it's called Sound. It's a sparkling water. The flavor is blueberry cinnamon. It tastes like a carbonated muffin.
I was going to say, does it taste like a muffin? Because I'm
Yeah,
like, blueberry cinnamon. That's kind of interesting.
it's
Is it good?
interesting. It's good. It's not what I didn't expect to drink a carbonated muffin, but
Right.
it's
Yeah, that's a
good. I
little
liked it.
awesome. I finally got my Rayvi in, so I'm having my Rayvi. Oh, I've been into the hibiscus mint lately.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pineapple was my jam, and now, yeah, the hibiscus mint with a little bit of extra salt.
That was the one I used to do at first all the time. And then I cleaned out my pantry this morning and I found like 2 unopened bags of Rayvi. So I was like,
wow. Jackpot.
Yeah.
I know. I saw it on your thing. I was like, ooh, you were like motivating me. Like, maybe I should clean out my pantry. I definitely will too.
It looks so much better now. And now I like to get the clear containers, but it's so expensive to actually organize your whole pantry with those. So I have like 4 of them. I'm like, maybe if I just go buy 2, I'll just like slowly add to it.
Just slowly. I know I'm always looking on Amazon. These are on sale. It's worth it. And then I'll keep them in my cart and I don't. But it is. They're expensive.
Yeah. Maybe Black Friday. Maybe I should put that on like my Black Friday list.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be there sooner than later. Might as well.
But yeah, so that's what my Monday has consisted of so far.
Exactly. So today, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about nutrition labels. And honestly, I think this is coming at a really good time. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, we've been talking about like Metabolism Makeover. We just finished up one of our recent rounds with our groups. So I think it's a good time to talk about it because while us as coaches, we don't have you macro track, we don't have you count your calories or anything like that. I think it's also important to know that we do, emphasize awareness of just being aware of what's in your food. It's not about tracking everything, but just learning to look at labels, learning what the labels even mean, what to even look at. Because I think there's a difference between just looking at the label, being aware of what the heck is your product you're eating versus tracking everything that's on your plate. And I think that can be maybe like tricky for some people to understand that it's not tracking, it's just the awareness part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I always tell clients, like, do what feels good to you.
Mhm.
Because for some people, looking at a food label, that's not triggering. They're fine with it. Like, that's not an issue. And then on the other side, there are some people who are like, ooh, all I've done is meticulously track everything for the last couple of years. Like, this is too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, if it's too much, then don't do it. But there's nothing wrong with being mindful of like, okay, what am I eating? How much fiber is actually in this bread? Like, how much protein is in this? It's kind of hard if you're trying to balance your plate if you don't exactly know what's on your plate. So, like you said, it's tricky. But for those of you who are like, okay, this isn't going to send me into a full-on spiral, then totally use the tools that you have to be mindful. And you don't have to do it every day with every single food. But if you're like, oh, I want to compare like these 2 breads that I usually eat and see like, hey, maybe what's going to give me more nutrients, like the food label is great. That's what it's there for.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, I haven't always done this. I think I've been more aware of nutrition labels probably within the past 2 years is when I've started looking at them more, just because like I started, I would say, at a C level on my eating when I was in college, and then I bumped up, and then I was making like B's with my nutrition, and then now I feel like I'm getting more in like the A area. Everything I eat is not always perfect, and honestly, I think people are maybe missing out on some life that if they're eating every single thing perfectly. So I still give myself an A, but I am more aware of what's on the label, what I kind of look at. But like you said, it's not something I do every single time. Like, I don't go out to food trucks and I'm like, can I see what's in your product? Like, no. I'm going to be like, okay, how can I get protein? I'm going to get a burger. How can I get some fiber? Do they have a salad? Or do they have some places have like roasted vegetables, so that's a bonus. Or like if you're getting nachos, protein, get your pulled pork, fiber, add all the veggies to it. And so that's how I do it going out. But going to the grocery store, and because I have a dairy allergy, so I'm kind of forced to look at the nutrition labels. But I have been more aware of just what's in it, what I'm exactly looking for, and even on the ingredients, what I'm looking for. I mean, there's some products that the ingredient list is so long that I just don't buy it because I'm like, I don't even feel like looking what's in it.
Yeah, I don't want to look.
Yeah.
No, and for us, I feel like it's really easy, right? We're like, ooh, nachos. I can throw in some pulled pork, or I can get, some extra beans, or, like we understand what everything is because that's like what we went to school for. This is like what we know. So for the average everyday person who maybe hasn't spent their whole life like dedicating it to nutrition, it's a good, useful tool so you can know like what you're eating. And I like to tell clients, like, I almost never look at the food label to see how many calories is in it. Like that's one of the least interesting things to me. And most of the time that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a couple specific things. And I think that is like a really good like aha moment for clients. Cause I mean, half the time people are looking at food labels and nutrition labels. It's because they want to know the calories. It's because like, that's what they've been kind of like told to do. So if you're not someone who like knows how much protein is in something or knows how much fiber is in something, use that tool that you have readily available and just ignore the calories. If that's really what it is, that's like going to set you off. Don't even look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wanting to know how much of what is in this because I'm trying to make sure I'm going to stay full for 4 hours. But if I don't know how much I'm eating, that's kind of hard. And you can do it. I mean, there's plenty of clients that do and they figure it out and they love that. And if that's you, yeah, you could absolutely do it. But if you're kind of like in this weird in between phase where you're like, okay, that's not going to set me off, but I want to know how much. Food labels.
And I'm the same way. I think that's kind of a good place to start at just looking at the labels. Calories. I don't look at the calories really either. Like I kind of just glance over. It's not something that I'm not like concerned about it because like you're like, I rather know what the carb situation looks like. What's the added sugars? What's the protein? What's the fiber situation going on here? What's the fat? I'm more concerned about that. Calories, meh, not as concerned. So I think to your point too, that's what most people are thinking of. A nutrition label, all right, it's going to tell me how many calories. Once I know the calories, then I know how I can add these two things together and bam, we have our meal. We can use that nutrition label for so much more information. Yeah. And I think marketing has also kind of played into that mindset because like the 100-calorie packs where it's like that's the most important part of your product. Like tell me how much fiber is in that and then let's talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something else that's interesting that I feel, and hopefully this doesn't like freak anyone out, but food labels are not perfect. There is a huge variation that they could be either, like there's a wide range that they could be incorrect. Like that,
like they have room for error.
Yeah, there's a certain room for error that's allowed by law. And I mean, this makes sense, right? Because you can't be completely 100% perfect on this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff, it's just going to have variation. So people who get really caught up on like the calories or this like certain whatever, or the marketing of it, like the calorie-free foods, like there's calories in those foods. There's just under a certain amount for it to be labeled calorie-free, So don't get too caught up on it. I tell people the same thing about fitness watches.
Yeah.
It's a good tool, but it's probably wrong a little bit, and that's okay.
And I'm addicted to my watch. I will be honest. Like I won't say addicted. Like I'm not crazy about it, but I like to have, again, that awareness piece. That's not even what we're talking about today, but.
I know, but it's, yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. So I think I guess let's get into like what are we going to look at on these labels? Okay. So calories, meh, boring. First, I would say serving size, because we have to know what these numbers are even pertaining to. And something about serving sizes, so this is based on how much the company has deemed for someone to typically eat or drink. That doesn't mean like that's what you have to eat or drink. This is just giving you the numbers. And sometimes companies like to be tricky and be like, oh yeah, look at this nutrition label, how good it looks. By the way, this is for 4 servings in this one container.
Yeah.
So sodas do that, where it'll be like a bottle has actually 2 or 3 servings in it. So I think that can help you identify what it actually has in it. Making sure we got the correct serving sizes, even for things like the Bonza pasta. I mean, I've talked about this before on my Instagram where I wasn't feeling super full when I had this pasta. I was like, I am getting like a decent amount of food in.
Yeah.
Turns out I was under eating because I was doing like under the serving sizes just because I was estimating.
Mm-hmm.
So doing those type of check-ins, looking at that serving size is going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. How much is, if a product is, 10 grams of protein, awesome. That's fantastic. But is it 10 grams of protein in like one slice of whatever this is? Or is it 2 slices makes that protein? Or like you said, the Bonza, I always tell clients that about Bonza because I'll feel hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever, I need more of it. But people are always like surprised by how much an actual serving size is. So yeah, you're getting more fiber, you're getting more protein, excellent choice. But unless you're having like the serving size, you're not getting that grams of protein and fiber. So it makes sense that you're hungry. So serving size first and foremost. And yeah, we could go into like all the labeling things and why companies will be like, 0-calorie food, but there's 15 servings in this packet. It's no longer like a 0-calorie food, but they have to make it 15 servings in order to say that because there has to be only a certain amount of calories in a serving for it to be 0. And they can put however many servings they want. Like they're allowed to do that. But okay, serving size. And then I like to look at your macronutrients. Like I want to know how much fat, I want to know how much protein, I want to know how many carbs, and I want to know how much fiber. Like those are just like my 4 things. I don't know about you. I used to be like really into like, saturated, unsaturated fat. I don't really look at that much anymore. I look at like total fat personally. I don't know about you.
I do a little bit for saturated fat, but I think with that comes the educational piece where I've talked about this with my clients with saturated fat is not just inherently bad like we've kind of been taught. So
Yeah.
we can include saturated fat and still have a healthy lifestyle. We need saturated fat to like form cell membranes. So including it, yes, but that's not the only source of fat that we want to get. So I think just always emphasizing that variety of fat is what I've told people. So I will take a peek at it, but it's nothing that I'm really like too concerned over.
Like, am I getting this many?
Yeah, like I don't scrutinize an exact number or anything like that. But also with that, I kind of examine the ingredients in it. So if it's something that has like coconut oil in it, I'm going to expect it to be a little bit higher in saturated fats, and that's fine. So I guess I do take a peek, but not to like the level that you might be thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I always get that question. Like I'll get that question of like, okay, Metabolism Makeover, we tell you to kind of start with 10 grams of fat at a meal. And then clients will start to be like more mindful and be like, oh, okay, hey, this is what 10 grams of fat looks like. And then they get really caught in the weeds about saturated, unsaturated. I think like you said, variety is important. We need both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like your only form of fat should not just be coming from cheese. Right. Get some avocados in there. Get some olive oil. The basics. And you'll have that variety. You'll be fine. Nothing to be like, oh, this is over. Can't do it. Like,
yeah, this is it.
Yeah, like there's no specific number that I'm ever like, oh no, this ain't gonna work.
I try to look at my overall fat, try to keep it within a certain range, and then of course, but again, for us, I feel like it's a little bit more easy, a little more simple. We know we need variety, so yeah. I guess not getting too caught up on like, this is why it's great to have a variety in your diet. Like if you're only using, like you said, cheese as your fat source, well, you're not getting all the other like micronutrients and other types of like fats that you need. Mm-hmm. Switch it up.
And I think as far as the carbohydrate amount, I do look at the total carbs, but it's also, one thing I guess about nutrition labels is that it depends on what you're looking at. Like if I am looking to buy dried fruit, I'm going to expect the carbohydrates to be higher than if I was looking at a protein bar. I'm going to expect my protein to be higher. So I kind of go into it with that mindset. So I look at the total carbohydrates, and then I look underneath it, and then you have your dietary fiber. Fiber, I would say, isn't over 3 grams is considered like high fiber type of food. So over 3 grams is a great goal to get to. And then I always look at the added sugars just because they add up very easily. Yeah. They sneak into so many foods that we don't even think about as being sugar-like. I mean, we think
Yeah.
about candy, but we don't really think about pasta sauce. And I've seen some pasta sauces with like 12 grams of added sugar.
That's a good thing to bring up because we kind of just demonize carbohydrates overall. Like people in general, it's like, ooh, carbs. But I always like to say, like, all carbs are not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, when you're looking at pasta sauce, it's probably going to be a little bit higher in carbohydrates than you would assume because tomatoes have natural sugar. Like, I mean, tomatoes are carbohydrate. They get broken down to glucose. That is sugar. So, those kind of carbohydrates, I'm not worried about carbs in my tomato sauce, but it is the added sugar that I'm worried about. I don't want it to be like all this added sugar because when we're talking about nutrients, carbs aren't like, everyone's like, ooh, carbs are evil, but like, the nutrients in a tomato is going to do much more for me than the nutrients in table sugar.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with like, there's so much going around still. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as it was, but still going like, you can't eat bananas, you can't eat carrots, you can't eat grapes because they're too high in sugar. Yes, they are a carbohydrate. I mean, that's what fruits and vegetables are, but you cannot sit there and tell me that a banana is the same thing as Twizzlers. Like, no, that is not the case.
No, banana has all kinds of stuff. It has potassium. It has fiber. It has,
And there's that difference between the added sugar and the naturally occurring sugars in your fruits and your milk. So I think that's always an important thing to keep in mind. And that's what really worries me when people are like, I've cut out all carbs. I'm like, wait a second. What do you mean by this, first of all? Are we cutting out like breads and pastas, which I don't think we need to do? Or are we cutting out like breads, pastas, fruits, vegetables? Because that's all carbs. Like,
yeah, it's very hard to go no carb. Like, I don't think people realize that.
Yeah. I mean, even on keto, you're not no carb. You're still doing some carbs. And people have that keto flu because of that. That's a whole nother podcast.
Well, keto. Yeah, I could talk about keto all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so know what kind of carbohydrates are in your meal. And like you said, there's going to be some foods I expect to be higher in carbohydrates. That's not a bad thing. That's what I want. But I don't necessarily want them in something that I'm trying to use as like a protein source or, that sort of thing. Or like, a sauce. Like I kind of expect that to be a little bit higher in fat, right? Like that's what I'm using it for. And this is where I think we went really wrong with the no fat, low fat craze. Like we used to think, ooh, fat makes you fat. And so let's take fat out of everything. But then people started inherently just eating a lot more sugar because when you take out fat, you have to have something that's going to like stabilize that food. You're going to have something that puts flavor back into that food. It's going to be sugar. You take the fat out, you have to add sugar. You just have to. So, people started, for example, like ketchup, like again, not demonizing anything, but there's like a lot of sugar in ketchup, which I'm like, we don't need to have that in ketchup, but whatever. So just being mindful of like, okay, where are my carbohydrates? And added sugar is going to like add to the total carbohydrates. And that's something like newer. I forget when they changed that, like when added sugar needed to be added, but it used to just be total carbohydrates and you had to like guess like, ooh, how much is coming from sugar? Now it tells you. So just be like mindful of that. And again, there's going to be some products that do have added sugar.
That's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I think in general, just keeping it under like 5 grams for a serving with whatever you're looking at. Again, if you are going to buy candy, like that's what you're wanting, or you're making brownies, it's probably going to have more than 5 grams because you're
right.
It's a sweet. It's a dessert. That's fine. I think another kind of thing to help put it in perspective is just knowing. So women, it's recommended. I think recommended is a weird word for it, but like 25 grams max of added sugar. For men, it's 36 grams max of added sugar.
Yeah. Like your recommendation.
Yeah.
And you look at the big picture, right? So if you're someone who doesn't like, okay, because sometimes people have a hard time with, oh my gosh, I had this dessert and it had all this added sugar. Oh my gosh. And it's like, okay, right. But are you eating that dessert every single day? If you're not, okay, then you order it once a week when you go out to a restaurant. It's not going to kill you. Like if you go over that recommended amount, okay, but if you're not doing it all the time, And that's fine. This is like a daily recommended amount. Like, don't exceed this type thing. So if you're doing it once every so often, okay, like, what's the big picture? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think another helpful tool for it as well is just knowing, so 4 grams of sugar is equal to 1 teaspoon. So that kind of helps you put it in a more visual perspective of how much am I actually getting. So if you're having a product with 20 grams of sugar, you take that divided by 4, and you know it's 5 teaspoons of sugar. So that's a lot different. If you can actually picture teaspoons, like the measuring spoon with sugar, that puts a little bit more perspective. You're like, oh, that's actually a lot of sugar. Like, imagine eating 5 teaspoons of that. That's what you're doing.
And I always tell clients, like, what are you eating? Is it a food that you expect to have some sugar in? Or is it like, for example, when I have my trail mix, I don't really want to be having like a bunch of teaspoons of sugar added to it unless I'm like going for a super long hike or I'm using it, something to help like refuel me in the middle of it. Like, always kind of look at, what are you eating? Do you expect it to have sugar? Because some foods are going to be like, you're going to expect that. And then others you're not. So it's just a good way to be mindful of it. Gosh, I forget. So one of the coaches in Metabolism Makeover brought this up like a really long time ago. And it was like this rule of thumb, because for example, when you're traveling, a lot of things that like we recommend is like, ooh, get some like yogurt, right? Like, everybody has yogurt in the morning that you can grab and go. And so people started to be more mindful of like, okay, added sugars in yogurt. And someone had said, as long as your protein and your fat add up to more than the added sugar, that's kind of like a safe thing. Like, you don't need to stress too much about it. It's when like the majority of like, I don't want something that's like 5 grams in protein and 15 grams in added sugar. Like, that's not going to do much for me. It's I'm hungry. Yeah. I need to figure out who said that.
It might have been Megan, actually.
Okay.
I think we've talked about that with like looking at protein bars and maybe, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb. With that kind of comes looking at protein. Protein is pretty simple. I mean, nothing really breaks down from it in the nutrition label. So just look at the protein. I would say probably over 10 grams, I would consider a good source, like higher protein.
I like to say 10 grams, especially because, well, at a meal, you definitely need more than 10 grams, average person. But I think for a snack, that's such a good aim, because if you're going to be eating a snack, like, we want snacks to do what we want them to do, right? We want them to kind of like keep us full, hold us over into an actual meal. In order to do that, you have to have nutrients in it. So something that's going to have like 10 grams of protein, that's definitely going to do what a snack is intended to do. It's going to help keep you full, shut off those feelings of hunger. It's going to satiate you.
Yeah, like today I got asked about the Kind bars, and I think those are great to have on hand just because they have better ingredients than some other bars out there, and I like them better than just your average Joe granola bar because they're made from the nuts. And then I guess with that being said, I wouldn't really classify them as a protein bar, though. They're about 6 grams of protein. So if I'm doing a Kind bar, I would do that maybe like an hour if I was going, like an hour before a workout, because it has some carbohydrates in it. And then if I'm doing it for like a snack, I would do that plus like a hard-boiled egg.
Yeah. Something to help bump up the protein, give you a little bit more nutrients. Yeah. And I think that's easier to do once you start like looking at food as like, I want this to serve me and what a snack is supposed to do. Like, we got really caught up with like low calorie snacks, like 100-calorie snack. And like, when you're dieting, exactly. But when you're dieting, you're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I can have this. It's only 100 calories. Like, we're so scared of eating calories, but then we're eating 3 of them throughout the span of 2 hours because they're not making us full. And it's like, you should just have a snack, like an actual snack.
Yeah. It's so weird to me that we can look at foods and be like, all right, I can eat this cookie because if I eat 3 of them, it's only going to give me 200 calories even. And like sometimes I'm like, okay, that's okay. But if I show you a protein bar with 200 calories and you're like, whoa,
that's too bad.
That's too much for a snack. I'm like,
yeah.
But we're getting protein, we're getting fiber, we're getting fat, like
we're getting nutrients. Like, it's gonna keep you full. But I think that's my biggest thing with counting calories. When you count calories, you are not getting adequate nutrients and you're not looking at food for what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to fulfill that hunger. It's supposed to give you energy. When you're eating stuff that's 100 calories, there's not much going on there.
Mm-hmm. And I
You
went
know,
through that
and
phase. Yeah, I went through that phase of where it was I bought the 100-calorie snacks, or I would only snack on vegetables and not really add anything to it because I was like, all right, it's low calorie, it's just a snack, it's meant to be small. But a snack, if we're going to snack, just snack for a purpose. Snack to bridge the gap between meal timings, you know? Make it actually something that's going to keep you full. That's going to be a lot better. Again, I mean, we say this in every episode. We're not saying this to be like, you're doing things wrong, get your head out of your butt. Blah, blah, blah. No,
yeah.
that's not why we're doing this. We're trying to help and be like, yeah, we've been there, and that's why we know all about it.
Yeah.
Because not only have we been there, but we've worked with several people that are just like you, who we've grown up in a time where it's came about to calories are what's matter, and that's not the truth.
Oh yeah. No, and I say this all the time. Like, I'm never judging anyone because if it's been a thing, I've probably done it. I mean, there is a huge portion of my life where I only made food choices based on the number of calories. I never looked at anything else. And I will say, I feel that like that's why so many women are like, I have a problem snacking. I can't stop snacking. I can't stop snacking because we have been looking at snacks as like as small as possible. Keep it as small as possible. And so when that doesn't fill you up and then you're also having small meals, of course you're going to feel out of control and feel like you need to be snacking all day because you're not giving your body the energy that it needs. So we're never here to judge you because I've done it. Like, I've done it. Like, I've done it. So I like to, I mean, this isn't like a snack, but this isn't like a snack episode, but since we're talking about food labels and like, okay, I like to tell clients to have at least 2 nutrients in a snack.
Mm-hmm.
At least 2 nutrients, if more, great. But like I'm talking like macronutrients. So, you know, protein and a fat or protein and fiber or whatever, because then it's going to serve you as like what a snack is supposed to do and you're going to feel great. Again, if you don't know what's in your food, use the food label.
I think definitely adding protein to the snack is definitely usually my go-to because it's hard for many of us to get enough protein, especially if you're someone who's trying to put on muscle. I think protein with the snack is very helpful. But yeah, getting just 2 of those nutrients in general, that will create a good filling snack for you there.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, we've talked about like the macronutrients, we've talked about the serving size. I think, I mean, maybe there's more, but the only other thing that I can think of that I really wanted to touch on was ingredients, because your ingredients are on food label. And, you know, you don't need to be like, oh gosh, what is that one guy that everyone's just been bashing?
Oh, what is his name?
Yeah. You don't need to be like him.
Yeah.
You don't need to be in the store like, ooh, is this approved? Like, okay. But you can look at the ingredients. And I would say, if you don't know this, the ingredients are listed by weight. So how much, whatever it is, okay? If it's a granola bar, whatever is the most ingredient in that granola bar is going to be first. So you always want to be looking at your first couple of ingredients at least to make sure that they're actually nutrients that are going to fill you up and they're not things like sugar.
I mean, if you're having a product and sugar isn't in the first 3 to 5 ingredients, that's pretty great. So just being aware of that ingredients order, I think, can be helpful. And then some things I try and look out for would be like artificial sweeteners, looking at sucralose. That's a big one, especially, and protein powders. Looking at sugar alcohols. And I would say like the inflammatory oils. Those are kind of the main things I look at. With that being said, there are things in my pantry that do have inflammatory oils in it. But what I do is I see where I can make swaps. I see what's going to be easy for me to swap out based on what I like, based on what's my budget, based on what's available at my grocery store. So just having that awareness of where can you make swaps helps a lot. Like I'll even say the Aldi's, their organic like pasta sauce, very good ingredients, low added sugars, no inflammatory oils, and it's like under $2.
And I'm glad you brought up the oils because I know that's something that a lot of people are stressed about. And it's all about like you need a variety, right? So you need omega-6 and you need omega-3, but you need them in a specific ratio to kind of like work for you. And so that's why we were talking about in the beginning, having saturated and unsaturated fats, or like having a variety. It's okay to have something that has vegetable oil in it, for example, but maybe you probably don't want that to be in something you're using every single day, like consistently, because you want to have that good ratio. And we eat a lot more of the inflammatory oils than we do the anti-inflammatory oils. Why? Because it's used so widely in our food system, because it's cheap. It helps foods keep like shelf stable.
Yeah.
It's just easy. So yeah, look at it. I mean, that's what I even think about that for like sugar alcohols. I don't love sugar alcohols, but there's like a couple things I buy that do have it. But if I'm going to be, buying a protein powder, I'm definitely not going to be buying one that has those in it, because it's something I'm probably going to use every day, and that's going to mess with me. So it's like just being like, okay, when am I using this product? How can I have a good balance?
I think that's helpful. But yeah, don't feel like, oh man, sorry. I just got distracted. It's raining outside all of a sudden and it was not supposed to.
Yeah, that is.
That ruins my walk for the day. I'll
Yeah,
get it
right?
in. Anyways, don't feel like you have to spend hours in the grocery store looking at labels. If you're deciding between two products, they're about the same price, like, oh, what should I get? Flip it over, check out those labels, or just start practicing with what's already in your pantry. This is not to say you have to start throwing away every single thing in your pantry that's over 5 grams of added sugar. No.
Yeah.
Now we're saying
No.
creating this awareness, understanding what's in your food. I think just understanding what to even look at these labels is very helpful. I will say one thing to add to it. This is not something that I typically look at, but I know it's on the label and I've had questions about it. The percent daily value. So,
that is a good one.
Yeah, it's on like the little side, like the very right to it. It has the percent behind it. But basically, this just means it's the percent of how much a nutrient is in a serving and contributes to the like daily diet based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Yeah. So anything with over 20% or higher, that means it's like in a high amount for that food. Anything 5% or lower is considered like a low amount. So I think with that, kind of looking at the nutrients like calcium, fiber, your vitamins, if those are higher than that 20%, great. If it's under 5%, we want that to be like our added sugars. So something that can just help you out there. Again, it's not something that I even really look at a ton, but I know it's on there. So if you see that, that's what it is. And with that, kind of like vitamin D and potassium, they were actually added in 2016 because it was shown in research that Americans were not getting enough of these vitamins and minerals. So they added it on there to create that awareness so you knew how much vitamin D and potassium in there is in your product. Fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, they have to be over a certain percentage for the label to claim like good source of vitamin D or a good source of fiber, or like, so they have to be over a certain percentage of that daily value based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Yeah. There's tons of laws that go into food labeling, but yeah, we're trying to bring awareness. We're trying to teach you how to use these tools that are around you all the time to really benefit you. It's not something to scare you. And yeah, and if you have questions, just let us know. But like Bailey said, you don't need to like be going through your pantry and throwing out anything, like you're not going to do that.
Yes. And at the end of the day, when you learn to eat more whole foods, like I don't eat every single thing pre-packaged. I try and do more whole foods, fruits, veggies, protein, and everything. So when you do more whole foods, I mean, it's a lot easier because you don't have to look at any labels. Apples don't have a label. Yeah. Zucchini doesn't have a label. So when you're doing more whole foods, you don't have to worry about it. It's more the things that we're just buying packaged all the time. So some popular pantry items I have are like protein bars, beef sticks, dried fruit, different types of crackers, protein powder, nut seeds. Those are the main things I kind of have in there. And even looking at things like chia seeds, knowing how much fiber is in there and how much fat, so then that can help bump up a smoothie if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like all helps you to be mindful. There's obviously people out there that make it like really intense. Too much. It's too much. Shouldn't do that. It's a lot. I think they're like calling him the new almond dad or whatever. like almond milk. People probably know who I'm talking about, but
He contradicts himself though all the time.
yes, yes, and it drives me wild because I'm like, this is somebody who clearly never took any classes on, nutrient metabolism.
Or doesn't understand that like the average person doesn't need to like spend that much money on buying every single perfect item.
That's another thing. A lot of health foods and they're just very expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have access to them. And so it's like, it kind of like makes it seem like this privileged thing. Like, unless you can spend $700 every week at the store, you're dying. You're killing your kids.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, that's not true at all. I mean, you've talked about it before. Your kids eat ranch. I mean, Josh, my boyfriend eats ranch. I don't because I will die because of my allergy. But,
Yeah.
we eat normal food too. It's not always just having swaps because they're normal. My mayonnaise, it has soybean oil in it because I don't want to pay $8 for other mayonnaise. And I think that comes just to deciding what your priorities are, deciding what you use most often. Like you mentioned, the protein powder. I use protein powder almost every day. I'm going to make sure I get a good quality protein powder.
Yeah. And that's it, and then always expanding your varieties of food. It's all about balance. And I mean, we talk about this with minerals, with different fats. Like, you want a variety of everything. Too much of one thing is not a good thing. So just keep that in mind. So obviously, well, that could be like I'm not going to tangent. I'm not going to do that to you guys right now. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to tangent. But hopefully this was helpful. Let us know if you have questions. Let us know if there's anything you want us to go deeper on, because I know this is like, nobody ever taught us how to read a food label.
I mean, we know it's on there, but it's like, what does that even mean and how does that apply? From the story, our last episode recording, I had one of the prebiotic sodas that has like 10 grams of fiber in it. Well, then I also had my protein bar like right at the same time around, which also has like 10 grams of fiber in it.
So much fiber at once.
Oh, it was too much fiber at one time. So too much of a good thing is possible. Yes. 20 grams of fiber within 15 minutes, my stomach was very bloated and in pain.
Especially if it's like a snack, because you're going to have... That's what I always tell people, to watch out with the high fiber wraps. Love them.
Yes.
But don't be adding a ton of extra fiber onto that. Because you're going to feel uncomfortable, and like...
And I didn't...
Water excess is bad. Like, we just can't...
Yeah, and I didn't even think about it until I was like, why? What is wrong with my stomach? And also, why am I not hungry for lunch yet? Like, what is going on? Yeah. It's because I had 20 grams of fiber at one time. Yeah. And that's also, like, looking at those prebiotic sodas. Like, if you're drinking 3 of those a day, so it can be a little too much. So I like to limit it to, like, 1 or less in a day.
That's what I tell people with Olipop's. Great, fun way to get fiber in. Maybe not like don't be doing 2-3 a day, because some people will, because they're like, oh, it's not soda. Or like, maybe not mixing it with your high fiber lunch. You're going to feel uncomfortable. It's just too much. Too little of something is bad. Too much of something is bad. It's all about balance. And hopefully that's what you guys take from this.
Yes. Well, we went on a few tangents. It stopped raining now, so it's sunny again. And welcome to Missouri weather. Sorry.
It's okay. I would have done the same thing.
It's fine. But yes, we will talk to you guys next week. Next week, we're going to get a little bit more sciencey, nerdy on you. But I think you're going to like it. We're going to talk about NEAT movement and EAT movement. NEAT.
NEAT. So non-exercise and exercise movement. What's the difference? What's better? How much of each do you need? We're going to get down to it. Yeah.
All right. So thank you for listening. Tune in next week. If you want to learn about movement, you probably do. Everyone needs to know about it. So we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.